Someone gasped loud enough to slice the quartet mid-note, and the ballroom turned like a single neck craning toward the staircase. Amara Reid stepped into the light, the black silk catching every stare like a net cast wide. Leon Mercer's glass paused midway, and the ice inside remembered how to drown. Amara said, "I am only here to work," though the mirrors argued she was here to reign. Leon said, who approved this seating chart, but his eyes mapped a path straight to her pulse. Whispers climbed the marble, quick and hungry as flashbulbs warmed up to hunt. Amara said, "Keep walking," to herself, and it sounded like a prayer with steel bones. Vanessa Pierce smiled the way a storm smiles at rooftops and pivoted toward the press. Vanessa said, "Control the line of sight," while her gaze tried to fold Amara into a corner. Leon moved first, apology brewing under a tux, pressed sharp enough to cut rumor. Amara felt heat chase down her spine, the dress a dare she never meant to throw. Leon said, "You look like trouble," and the word sounded almost holy on his tongue. Amara said, "Then keep your distance," but the sting in her voice trembled like a match near dry wood. Cameras popped, and the room learned a new religion called them. The whispers grew legs and sprinted toward the PR table, where glossy folders sat like shields waiting for a war. Leon said, "Contain the coverage," while a manager nodded like a bobblehead in a storm. Amara adjusted her badge, the word assistant bright as neon against a dress that refused to be small. She said, "Run of show stays on schedule," and her calm turned noise into lines on a page. A photographer slid left for a cleaner angle, and shame tried to climb her throat wearing old shoes. Leon said, "You shouldn't apologize for walking," but apology was a habit that paid rent on her ribs. Vanessa moved nearer, perfume sharp as strategy, and her smile promised paperwork with teeth. Vanessa said, "Our brand bleeds if you misstep," and the sentence wore silk gloves holding brass knuckles. Amara said, "Then stop shaking the floor," and her spine clicked into place like a lock meeting the true key. The quartet recovered tempo, pretending nothing had been revealed in the light. Leon watched the room adjust to a new center it didn't vote for. Amara mapped exits, contingencies, and the price of dignity. Somewhere a headline was already typing itself, hungry and sure. The band slipped into a slow number that flirted with ruin, and the dance floor opened like a dare with velvet edges. Leon said, "1 minute," and the words carried the gravity of a board vote and a prayer. Amara said, "You are my employer," and every syllable struggled not to become a confession. He offered his hand, and the room leaned closer as if the chandelier had whispered gossip. Amara placed her palm against his, and heat moved up her arm like a rumor that planned to be true. Leon said, "Tell me to stop," and the music answered not yet with aching strings. She said, "Keep distance," while stepping closer, and hypocrisy blushed and hid behind her ribs. Vanessa watched from the edge, eyes cool as a winter ledger calculating losses. The camera flashes softened, choosing romance over scandal for a merciful breath. Amara counted beats, and the dress followed, elegant, relentless, alive. Leon said, "I forgot how to be careful," and the confession sounded like a key turning in an old lock. She said, "Then learn fast," but her pulse praised the risk. The floor held them up anyway, traitorous and kind. The mercy ended when the step and repeat flared alive, and the paparazzi remembered their hunger. Vanessa said, "Statement in 10, as if time bowed to her calendar. A light burst, and Amara blinked, the world reduced to white knives and hot snow. Leon angled his body like a shield, and the new angle looked like a promise he had not earned. Amara said, "Don't make me a headline," and the plea hid inside firm vowels. A reporter asked if this dress meant a change in status, and dignity scoffed in the corner. Vanessa said, "Our values remain unchanged," and the lie wore a crown and kissed the cameras. Amara breathed slow, letting shame pass without a seat at her table. Leon said, "I will answer," but she shook her head and lifted her chin. Amara said, "I am competent, not ornamental," and the quote landed like a clean blade. The room flinched, divided between worship and anger. Somewhere deep in her chest, a boundary hammered itself into the floor. The night spit them out to the curb where a black limo idled like a patient threat, and the rain returned to finish its thought. Leon said, "Let me take you home." And the syllables carried a softness that didn't match the city. Amara said, "I have shoes and a spine," and the joke tried to keep her safe while failing beautifully. The driver held the door like a question no one wanted to answer first. Street lights smeared gold across wet asphalt, turning the world into a painting that bled at the edges. Leon said, "I crossed a line," and his breath fogged a moment between them. Amara said, "I set one," and the line tightened like a wire and hummed. A siren sighed far off, bored with glamour in its aftermath. He reached for her hand, paused, and chose air instead, which hurt cleaner. Amara said, "Tomorrow, I do my job," and the promise sounded like armor strapped in the rain. Leon nodded once, learning the shape of restraint the way fire learns a hearth. The door closed on the night's last spotlight, and the city kept its secrets another hour. Dawn folded itself over the small kitchen, and a kettle hissed like a tired witness. Amara Reid stacked bills in neat columns, a battlefield disguised as paper. She said, "We will breathe after 10 days," and the promise kept her hands from shaking. A group chat from the gala buzzed, then died, a fly against the window of her resolve. She opened her laptop, and the dress still lived in the tabs, a stubborn ghost. Amara said, "Archive everything," and the screen obeyed with mechanical mercy. A voicemail from her landlord waited with patient teeth, and she did not press play. She penciled a budget that marched like soldiers and left no room for softness. Amara said, "Rent, utilities, transit, savings," counting dignity as if it were currency. A headline mocked her restraint from a news site, but she let the page load and starve. She brewed coffee so strong it could carry her decisions for 1 hour. Amara said, "At work I am steel," and the sentence felt like armor that finally fit. The kettle clicked off, and the apartment exhaled, choosing her side for once. She folded the last bill, kissed her knuckles for luck, and faced the morning squarely. Amara said, "No apologies today," and even the mugs on the shelf seemed to nod in agreement. Silence met Leon Mercer at the penthouse, like a doorman who had already judged his soul. Treadmill lights woke and demanded tribute, so he ran until the gala burned off in salt. Leon said, "Discipline first," and the city answered with cold glass and long memory. Steam wrapped the bathroom, trying to erase the shape of a woman in black silk. The mirror returned the version of him that signs deals and survives headlines. Leon said, "You lost control," and the faucet ticked once like a small agreement. He opened a cabinet of awards that glowed and meant little this morning. A photo of his late father leaned behind a plaque, blessing and burden welded together. Leon said, "What would you do?" and the silence refused to pretend. He drafted an apology that sounded like strategy and deleted every adjective. An unsent message to Amara waited in his phone, a bright temptation. Leon said, "No contact," and set the device face down as if it might bite. He dressed in a navy suit that promised order and hid the tremor in his pulse. At the door he paused, letting regret sit beside him, then chose movement over mercy. Leon said, "Fix the mess you made," and the words felt heavier than the cufflinks he fastened. He stepped into the hallway as the elevator hummed like a verdict. Work arrived like a tide that respected no dress code, and the office swallowed gossip by the mouthful. Amara Reid stepped onto the floor before anyone could attach new myths to her name. She said morning team and distributed schedules that forgave no delays or drama. Small kindnesses followed, coffee placed, an intern rescued from a printer tantrum. Power sent a policy reminder, and shame tried to borrow a chair from her spine. Amara said, acknowledged, and returned the chair to storage with a quiet click. Her inbox begged for triage, and she sorted flames from smoke with practiced fingers. Vanessa Pierce toured the corridor with a smile calibrated to bleed without stains. Vanessa said, "Deliverables matter more than narratives," and heels stitched thunder into carpet. A coworker offered sympathy that smelled like curiosity, and Amara declined gently. She said, "We have a deadline," and the words cleaned the air like rain. The gala's photos pinged through the building, but she did not bend to look. Amara said, "We launch at noon," and the project snapped into alignment around her voice. By lunch, the room remembered she was indispensable, and she allowed herself one breath. She said, "Keep moving," and the day obeyed. Tasha Grant brought takeout and the kind of honesty that knocks before breaking the door anyway. The apartment filled with ginger, garlic, and the kettle that refuses retirement. Tasha said, "You set yourself on fire in front of money," and the sentence held water and flame. Amara Reid said, "I did my job," but the defense blinked before the jury. Tasha kicked off her shoes and sorted feelings with the calm of a bomb tech on lunch. She said, "You want dignity and desire both with receipts," and slid chopsticks across the table. Amara tasted heat and remembered a hand at her waist like a rumor trying to be law. She said, "Boundaries are not suggestions," and the chopsticks clicked like a small gavel. Tasha said, "He is a headline with teeth, and you are not a snack," and laughter almost won. A text preview from the office promised a long week wearing sharp heels. Tasha said, "Choose yourself before they invoice your heart," and the line landed true. Amara Reid said, "Tomorrow, I work and that is all," and the room unclenched a little. They ate in companionable silence while the rain returned to rehearse fate. Tasha said, "Call me if the floor tilts," and she left a hug folded on the chair. The boardroom liked its mornings surgical, and the glass wall cut the skyline into obedient pieces. Leon Mercer rehearsed talking points while a clock insisted on being obeyed. He said, "Stability equals value," and the phrase tasted like cardboard and habit. Vanessa Pierce arranged folders like knives in velvet, precise and patient. Vanessa said, "We lead with community, not scandal," and the room nodded without proof. An assistant handed out agendas while rumor drifted through the vents like perfume. Leon remembered the dance floor and winced at the memory of wanting more than control. He said, "I will address the optics," and the word optics felt smaller than the truth. A director asked about risk, and spreadsheets marched onto the screen like soldiers. Leon said, "We accept accountability," and his chest discovered a painful kind of relief. Vanessa said, "Careful with language," and a smile covered the warning with lace. The vote calendar chimed, indifferent to their private storms. Leon closed his notes and saw a path that did not require her sacrifice. He said, "After this meeting I owe an apology," and the table finally looked human. He tightened his cuff, a promise to act beyond policy. The agenda moved to public comments, and the day bared teeth. Her printed rules like hymns, and invited Amara Reid to sing along, softly and in key. The conference room smelled like lemon polish and judgment rehearsed for court. Dana from HR said, "No fraternization," and laid the policy down like a verdict. Amara said understood, and folded her hands so they did not shake or shout. The memo mentioned conflict of interest, image risk and consequences dressed in calm fonts. Amara said, "My performance remains excellent," and the facts sat upright beside her. Dana said, "We value you," which is what people say before they take something. The signature line waited like a cliff that asked to be jumped politely. Amara said, "I will sign and keep boundaries," and the pen did not bleed. Outside the glass, co-workers walked past like weather she could not control. The dress from the gala flickered in her mind and dissolved under office light. Amara said, "I choose work today," and the sentence steadied the floor under her shoes. A copy of the NDA slid into a file and learned to keep quiet. The door opened to a corridor where desire hid its face and deadlines grinned. Vanessa Pierce requested a private talk in the executive lounge where plants looked expensed and unbothered. The city glittered past the windows like temptation on sale. Vanessa said, "Narratives decide markets," and stirred tea with surgical grace. Amara Reid said, "Performance decides outcomes," and refused any sugar in her voice. Vanessa smiled with 90% warmth and 10% warning, a perfect blend. Vanessa said, "Proximity invites projection," and let the word scandal hover without landing. Amara said, Distance is already enforced, and set her cup down like a gavel. Vanessa studied her the way a jeweler studies a stone before pricing it. Vanessa said, "If you falter, the board will not," and the sentence left no fingerprints. Amara said, "I do not falter," and the room believed her for one quiet breath. The lounge clock clicked toward futures. Neither woman would admit wanting. Vanessa stood, elegance knifed into silhouette by the window glow. Vanessa said, "Keep your shine in a box," and left the air colder by a degree. Amara watched the skyline and chose to be the box and the light at once. Leon Mercer scheduled a check-in and built a wall out of syllables before she arrived. The office smelled like cedar and restraint, and the view bragged on his behalf. Leon said, "We should limit interface," and the phrase sat between them like bad art. Amara Reid said, "Understood," and filed the sting under professional development. He offered to route tasks through a deputy as if care were a hazard sign. Leon said, "I respect your boundaries," and the word respect tasted like distance disguised as mercy. Amara said, "I am not fragile," and her eyes asked him to stop pretending. The silence admitted there had been a dance and a fault line, both real. Leon said, "You deserve safety," and the consonants bowed to her name. Amara said, "I deserve trust and equal footing," and the floor agreed without ceremony. He nodded, then reassigned nothing, which said more than his posture. The meeting ended with a handshake that felt like a door refusing to open. Amara left with her chin level and her workload intact. Leon watched the door and learned how absence can be loud. Sunday found Amara Reid on a church sidewalk where flowers tried to outsing gossip. The air held fried fish, perfume, and a sermon still echoing about guardrails and grace. And Lila said, "Be wise, baby," and the words wore love and weather. A deacon's wife smiled like she knew the ending already, and preferred it neat. Amara said, "I am working and minding mine," and the corners softened around her. Tasha Grant arrived with a hug that fought off 3 rumors at once. Tasha said, "They do not pay your rent or your shame," and the son smiled briefly. A neighbor asked for a selfie and whispered about the dress as if it could hear. Amara said, "That night is over," and the sentence held a tiny tremor. And Lila said, "Dignity is pricey, pay it anyway," and pressed a foil-wrapped plate into her hand. The choir spilled into the street, bright and off-key, which felt like hope. Tasha said, "Call me before decisions colonize your heart," and laughed to keep it light. Amara nodded and felt the world shrink to fit her ribs again. The foil warmed her palms like a promise that would cost and still be worth it. Logistics announced a site visit like fate, wearing a badge and a timetable. The itinerary paired Amara Reid and Leon Mercer because efficiency loves chaos in a tie. Amara said, "Separate rooms and clear scope," and the email went out fast. Travel answered with limited inventory, and a hotel that specialized in glamorous problems. Leon said, "We proceed with professionalism," and copied 3 people as chaperones in pixels. The calendar stacked meetings in a city that smelled like steel and second chances. Vanessa Pierce said, "Deliver outcomes in silence and approved budgets with a tap." Tasha Grant texted 3 fire emojis and 1 prayer, which felt accurate. Amara packed neutrals and boundaries, zipped tight inside a hard case. She said, "We are adults who choose our lines," and the suitcase clicked shut. Leon reviewed contracts while imagining a hallway lit by decisions for grown people. He said, "Work first," and tried to believe it enough. The flight notification chimed like destiny with a boarding group. Amara closed her door on the echo of a dance she refused to repeat. The hotel room hummed with recycled air when the notification hit like a siren under skin. Amara Reid opened the link and saw her name stitched to an old Mercer wound. The article mapped layoffs, protests, and a scholarship with Leon's logo. Amara said, "They turned my neighborhood into a press kit," and the screen did not flinch. A photo of her teen self at a grant event glowed like a trap set years ago. Leon Mercer knocked once and stepped in unreadable and too human. Leon said. I just saw it, and the carpet felt thinner under both of them. Comments swarmed beneath the byline, teeth sharpened by boredom and bias. Amara said, they will say I planned last night to cash in, and the thought burned. Leon said, I will issue a correction, and the word correction felt small. The link added her mother's factory to its tally of losses like a trophy. Amara said, your name built this stage, mine pays the ticket, and silence agreed. Rain pressed the window and turned the city soft, then ruthless again. Leon said, I didn't know about this connection. And truth sounded late. Amara closed the laptop and felt the past stand up and ask for a dance. Morning served the leak with coffee, when Xavier Holt chose a corner table like a stage. He lifted a smile he used to wear softly, and now wielded. Xavier said, you're trending, and slid a folder across the wood. Amara Reid said, you kept receipts or created them, and did not sit back. The folder held texts, photos, and a timeline that begged for scandal. Xavier said, they will pay to keep this dull, and tapped the margin. A barista called names, and the cafe turned into a jury that pretended not to look. Amara said, blackmail travels fast and dies hungry, and flipped a page. Xavier said, or it eats, and his voice wore regret like cologne. He added a contract with a number sharpened to wound. Amara said, you knew about the grant photo, and the betrayal found a chair. Xavier said, I know what they fear, while his eyes asked for history back. Amara stood, spine straight, choosing firebreak over flame. She said, send it to legal, not me, and the floor kept steady. Outside the day shone rude and bright, daring her to blink first. The records room smelled like dust and old decisions that never apologized. Leon Mercer unlocked a file drawer that knew his last name too well. Leon said, my father's team cut those jobs, and the paper did not argue. He spread memos like a crime scene that begged for light. Amara Reid said, and then funded scholarships to hush the sound, and the echo agreed. A memo marked community pacification made the air colder. Leon said, I started the foundation to do better, and the sentence limped. Amara touched a photo of a ribbon cutting where her smile worked overtime. She said, good does not erase harm, it pays installments, and a corner curled. Leon said, tell me how to repair, and his voice cracked on repair. The city hissed through the vent like a witness who had seen enough. Amara said, start with the truth, then share the mic, and left the photo face down. Leon closed the drawer as if it could swallow history twice. They stood between guilt and possibility while the lights buzzed on. Vanessa Pierce arranged her office like a chessboard with generous lighting. She waited behind glass that reflected their smaller selves back at them. Vanessa said, there is a merger clause about stability, and the word clicked. She slid the clause forward, every line tidy as a blade. Leon Mercer said, you want an engagement or silence, and the room did not blink. Vanessa said, I want the deal, and the deal wants predictability, and smiled without warmth. Amara Reid said, people are not optics, and the clause kept breathing anyway. Vanessa said, if the narrative skews, we lose billions and jobs, neat and lethal. Leon said, we will disclose the past and set terms, and broke 3 unspoken rules. Vanessa's eyes flashed with respect, and a warning stitched together. She said, then make the truth profitable, and slid a media plan across. Amara picked up the plan and felt the weight of a story trying to own her. She said, we center the harmed, not the brand, and the air changed shape. Vanessa watched the power migrate and recalibrated without flinching. The email surfaced in a forwarded chain that smelled like dust and strategy. A recruiter praised Amara's brilliance and added 3 words that bruised. The phrase raid eyes on Leon, casual as a wink in a dark room. Amara Reid said, so I was a mirror, not a hire, and the cursor blinked guilty. The CC line carried Vanessa and HR like silent signatures. Leon Mercer said, I did not know, and the shock softened his voice. Amara said, but it used me to shape you. And the truth stood tall. She scrolled to a budget line called Cultural Insights Stipend, and almost laughed. Leon said, "This explains why they never questioned your access." And anger warmed. Amara closed the email, and felt fingerprints appear on a knife she never touched. She said, "If this leaks, they will call me the architect." And the floor tilted. Leon said, "We show the chain ourselves, and risk tasted clean for once." Amara nodded, choosing exposure over erasure, and saved every file twice. Outside, the dusk gathered like witnesses nearing the rail. The night waited to see who would tell it first. The boardroom reeked of power and polished lies, glass walls hiding no one. Vanessa Pierce flicked her wrist, and the leak landed in the projector like blood on silk. Vanessa said, "Transparency is profitable," and her smile carved the room in half. Amara Reid felt the photo of her teenage self sharpen into a weapon. Leon Mercer said, "This ambush changes nothing," though his voice cracked on nothing. Directors whispered about liability, as if dignity could be itemized. Amara said, "The harm was real" before the headline, and the silence thickened. A chart displayed numbers like headstones, every line item a wound. Vanessa said, "She is compromised," and the words sparkled with venom. Leon said, "She is competent," but doubt clawed the edges of the table. Amara straightened, spine steel, heart raw, and declared, "My community is not a footnote." Heads snapped up, finally awake. The lights dimmed for the next slide, but the truth had already been broadcast. Leon clenched his jaw, choosing his battlefield. Leon Mercer rose, chair scraping like a blade unsheathed. He said enough, and the word landed heavier than stock price. He walked to Amara's side, breaking centuries of boardroom choreography. Vanessa Pierce said, "You'll torch the merger," but her voice cracked with disbelief. Amara whispered, "Don't make me collateral," and her body trembled with controlled fire. Leon said, "I'd rather torch an illusion," and his hand hovered near hers without touching. Directors exchanged looks, torn between profit and principle. A slide clicked, irrelevant now. Leon said, "The company profited from pain. We must own it," and gasps scattered. Vanessa closed her folder hard enough to echo. Amara said, "Repair means centering the harmed, not hiding them," and her words were a shield. Leon added, "And I stand with her," and silence crowned the declaration. The room shifted, not yet agreeing, but no longer blind. The corridor after the storm stretched like judgment hallways do. Leon caught up with Amara, his voice stripped raw. Leon said, "You think I used you?" And the words shook. Amara stopped, eyes burning. Amara said, "I don't think, I know," and truth hurt sharp. He said, "I never orchestrated this," but guilt clung like sweat. She said, "Intent doesn't erase impact," and the sentence split the silence. His hand reached out, froze midair, then fell, ashamed. Leon said, "I chose you, not optics," and his voice cracked. Amara said, "You chose too late," and her eyes brimmed with betrayal. The corridor lights buzzed, indifferent witnesses. Leon's jaw locked, a man breaking inside marble. Amara walked away, heels striking like verdicts. The distance between them became a canyon measured in breaths and years. Amara crashed onto her sofa, dignity cracked, tears refusing to be neat. Tasha Grant poured her water and set silence on the table like medicine. Tasha said, "He broke you wide open," and the truth cut, then stitched. Amara whispered, "I broke myself by believing," and the confession trembled. Tasha said, "No, you loved," and her eyes glistened too. The city outside sang sirens and rain, a lullaby for the bruised. Amara said, "I will not be defined by betrayal," and strength flickered. Tasha said, "Then stand, but not alone," and held her hand tight. The apartment filled with breath that hurt, but promised survival. A single text from Leon lit Amara's phone, unread, begging like a ghost. She placed it face down, choosing herself over him. Leon Mercer walked out of the skyscraper as if the building itself had chained him. Cameras swarmed, asking questions sharpened for blood. He said, "The truth is ours to face," and the quote hit the wires before he inhaled. Vanessa Pierce stood at the glass above, calm as a queen losing a rook. Leon's resignation email leaked within minutes, and the market shook. Amara saw the headline at home and exhaled without victory. Leon said, "Freedom is not free," as he handed his badge to security, his shoulders lighter. The world outside still wanted a villain or a savior, not a man in between. He stepped into rain, letting it baptize a decision that cost him everything. Amara's phone buzzed again, but she did not open it. In the distance, a city kept spinning, uncaring yet somehow waiting. Amara Reid sat at her desk, resignation typed in draft, not yet sent. She said, "I build my own table," and the line steadied her. Bills and memories of betrayal pushed her toward clarity. She sketched a business plan on scrap paper, margins filled with courage. Her voice was low but certain. "No more begging rooms to seat me." Coffee cooled, sun burned through blinds, and the silence felt like freedom. Leon Mercer walked through his father's old office, shelves lined with trophies of profit. He said, "No more masks," and began drafting a restitution plan. The merger was gone, but dignity could be rebuilt. His hand hovered over the family portrait before turning it face down. "Repair starts here," he whispered, and the room lost some of its weight. Community hall buzzed with voices, folding chairs filled with neighbors scarred by loss. Amara said, "We were harmed, but we can shape the future," her voice steady. Leon stood beside her, silent, listening. A hand raised, angry but hopeful, demanding change. Amara said, "No gloss, no excuses, just repair," and the crowd leaned in. Vanessa Pierce rearranged contracts in her office, crown intact, though alliances had shifted. She said, "Stability is a myth, but survival is strategy," and signed a new deal. Her empire remained, but without Leon's shadow. She watched her reflection and muttered, "I still win," though victory tasted thin. The cafe was small, quiet, no photographers waiting. Amara sat first, choosing truth over spectacle. Leon entered. No badge, no empire, just a man. He said, "I have nothing to hide," and she met his eyes. Amara whispered, "Then love me without armor," and silence wrapped them. No promises, no crowns, only choice. The new gala replaced spectacle with receipts and names spelled correctly. A choir opened with a hymn for workers, and the room hushed like a classroom. Amara Reid said, "Tonight belongs to those who lost more than headlines," and applause rose clean. Leon Mercer stood beside her without title or throne. Leon said, "Funds route to the block that paid our debts in silence," and the pledge screen lit. Vanessa Pierce watched from the aisle, face unreadable, crown adjusted by will. Donors leaned forward, calculating a better math. Amara said, "Transparency is policy and promise," and the words rang bright. Cameras caught impact presentations instead of gowns. The night bent toward repair, not approval. Leon said, "We are here to listen," and the stage made room for testimonies. An elder spoke, and the city's past reached into the present with steady hands. Xavier Holt arrived late with a smirk and a folder that wanted trouble. He cornered a reporter and tried to sell a recycled storm. Xavier said, "Corruption has a pretty face," and lifted a printed thread. Amara Reid stepped in before rumor found oxygen. Amara said, "Publish the full chain," and handed receipts already posted online. The reporter blinked at timestamps that broke the angle's spine. Leon Mercer said, "Extortion met sunlight, and security waited without haste." Xavier's grin fell apart under the lights that loved truth for once. He backed away, folder useless as wet paper. Amara said, "Not tonight," and the crowd returned to testimonies. A youth speaker took the mic, and the room chose future over drama. Back in the hall, Tasha Grant stood at a side table, stacked with petitions and plans. Volunteers swarmed like bees with clipboards. Tasha said, We're funding the media lab and the childcare wing, and pens flew. Her proposal board wore numbers that sang. A council member nodded, moved by math and memory. Amara Reid crossed over and pulled her close. Amara said, "You built the backbone," and pride warmed the corner. A donor asked for wiring instructions like a blessing with a deadline. Tasha said, "Receipts will be public," and eyes lit. The choir rehearsed in the stairwell, joy echoing now. Someone placed lilies on the table, and the air softened. When speeches ended, the dance floor stayed empty on purpose. Leon Mercer found Amara Reid near the exit, where quiet collects. Leon said, "I can offer work, repair and patience," and he did not reach. Amara watched the room settle into good noise. Amara said, "I can offer truth, boundaries and time," and her voice steadied. A janitor rolled a cart past, the most honest rhythm in the building. Leon said, "No spotlight, just small days done right," and his shoulders eased. She nodded once, granting a path, not a prize. Outside, the night held both of them without grandeur. They stepped into the street where the city exhaled heat and music from a passing car. Rain threatened but held, like mercy. Leon said, "I will want you and still choose the work," and the promise wore humility. Amara traced the sky with her eyes, counting what had been paid and what remained. Amara said, "If you ever lie, we end at the next breath," and the line rang final. He accepted the rule like a lifeline and a law. A siren faded toward some other fire. They walked, not touching, keeping pace, letting the future draft them softly. Amara said, "Come see me in the morning," and the night closed around the sentence like velvet.